check out the stream. Videos. I'm broadcasting live. Audio check. Live. Audio check. Works. YouTube chat. Pop out chat. Beautiful. Do a test. Test. Does test work? 3, 2, 1. Test. Maybe 5, 4, 3. What, you saw it? Yep, there it is.
Yeah, I'm looking at your channel.
And then test on Twitch. Twitch is faster than YouTube when it comes to streaming, but other than that, everything's good. And we're live! For those of you who do actually watch my channel, welcome! This is not a Let's Play, this is not a live stream. This is me, but you guys know my face by now. And that's my good friend, Mr. Woodchuck. He has been my friend since middle school. Is that correct?
Was that sixth, seventh grade?
You were 6th grade. I was 7th. Because I'm 1 year older than him. I was 1 year ahead of him in school. No, wait. You were 1 year ahead of me in school. You were the older one. You were 7th. I was 6th. We shared the same bus for a while. And then that was in middle school. We actually shared the short bus.
Yep.
Funny as it was, because there was no handicapped students that needed to go home in the afternoon or be picked up at our school with that bus. And that was the only bus available to do our route, because our route was so damn weird. We had like 5 people.
It was really, really far distance.
Yeah, there was 5 of us total. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, there was like, I think the most we ever had on our bus was like 8.
Really? That was that much? I only remember 5.
Yeah, I think we had 8 at one point, but
that didn't last long.
Yeah.
We had John. It's okay to mention his name because I don't know where he is anymore. He died. We had John, you, me. That was 3. Then we had that
Austin?
one. Austin was 4, and I don't remember anybody else.
Remember the kid with the burn?
Did he also have blonde hair like mine, but brighter?
No, he had no hair. He was deformed from a burning.
That's someone I don't remember.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he was definitely.
I'm wondering if he preceded you.
Probably because you took the bus before I did. Because don't forget, 1 year older. You had it before I did, so I think I didn't see him because of that factor. Anyway, that's our reminiscent about our history, how far back we go. Very far. Do you remember the history of how we first met? Because I don't.
How we first met?
That's hard, isn't it?
I was pretty sure it was the bus. I think it was just we started picking you up, and it's like, a new guy on the bus, and you sat across from me, and we started talking.
Nintendo was my thing at the time.
I think what nailed us down was Mortal Kombat, because we started like really laying into the original arcade Mortal Kombat, because they had the machine at the movie theater.
Bowling alley. It was at the bowling alley. It was also at the movie theater. They were in both places because Mortal Kombat at the time, if you guys don't know because you're younger than us, Mortal Kombat arcade machines were everywhere.
Yeah, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing one of those things, which was funny because they were all just absolute gore fests, and people were just shocked that they were putting these machines everywhere that just had this gratuitous violence.
And it was the first Mortal Kombat, by the way, not even the Mortal Kombat 2, which, by the way, was twice as popular as MK1. When MK2 hit, God. That was like double. That was double trouble. Everybody, like, it wasn't just Mortal... Because Mortal Kombat, technically from a technical standpoint, was a shitty fighting game.
Yeah, it was terrible. The mechanics were bad.
You could cheat moves, you could stun lock, you could not really stun lock, but there were moves that you could continuously spam with some characters. The frames were bad. Like, certain characters actually had more frames than others, so you never picked them because it took more frames of animation for them to complete their attack. So if it took less frames of animation, you picked that character because they were faster. Like Mortal Kombat 1 was not optimized. It was a shitty game.
These were all things that nobody had ever considered. I mean,
exactly.
This was way before even like an E-League competitive sports, esports that it had even been dreamed of.
Right.
And
it's hard to put you guys back in the time when arcade machine, like no one even considered frame rates as a competitive advantage with fighting characters.
No, and it was, I remember it was like, God, if you got Sub-Zero and you would just keep slide, and you just get some kid like totally pissed at you for, because basically you just ripped off his quarter.
You did, because you spammed the fuck out of a move that was cheap as shit. And
then, insult to injury, you walk over and rip his head off. I mean, it just...
Spinal rip, yeah. Mm-hmm. What was that, like, block, up, back? What was his spinal rip fatality move?
I thought it was 4 down, 4 high punch.
Well, okay, I'm mistakenly trying to mix MK2 Sub-Zero moves into it. I don't remember Sub-Zero 1's moves from MK1.
Yeah, I believe it was 4 down, 4 high punch.
Yeah, but you had to be at just the right space. And you guys, again, younger generation don't know this, but you had to be at the exact distance, because if you knew how to do it, but you weren't there, it wasn't
the worst one was Scorpion.
For what, Toasty?
Was, the Toasty, they pull off the mask, and there's, because the distance you had to sit on to get, to get that to go off, because it was block up.
Yeah, exactly. It was so easy to do.
Yeah.
But you had to be at like 1.5 character distance or something like that, and it was like you had to know.
Yeah,
but
which absolutely ruined the ability to use Scorpion against Reptile, because he can't block.
Reptile, though, was a hidden character,
right?
You couldn't,
but you couldn't block in the match preceding him,
right?
And you
couldn't block, and you had to perform a fatality, so you couldn't use Scorpion against Sub-Zero. Because you had to use up with his fatality. Same with Sonya. No, Sonya was like block, back, forward, back, punch. No, it wasn't block. It was just back, forward, back, punch, so you could be her. Sonya was the most forgiving for her fatality. I could be almost any distance from you. With Sonya, it's like they didn't actually do a distance with her. I remember I could be halfway across the screen and she could blow her kiss and kill you, and I could be very close. Sonya wasn't balanced for her fatality.
No.
They weren't balanced. There was no balance with these characters. So if you actually could own the competition with a shitty character, then you really were good. Yeah. The shittiest character was Kano.
Yeah, Kano was obnoxious.
He was actually the strongest character, but you couldn't really pull off his specials with any act, because his ball move, first off, you have to hold block and then do a deep rotation to set the fucking thing up before you launched him. The whole setup took like 2 seconds. And in a fighting game, 2 seconds is too long. Like, you couldn't launch Kano's ball. Now, the computer could launch his ball like that.
Oh, yeah, God, that was obnoxious. Computer always cheats. Everybody knows that.
Actually, it's been proven. In modern day hackers, they have proven that Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat 2, the computer absolutely cheats. It's been proven. It is objectively a proven fact. The computer can pull off moves you can't, with accuracy you can't do. And the only reason you win is because the computer lets you.
Right.
And I'm like, that is such a shitty way to do a fighting game. Go ahead.
Yeah, at any level.
Mm-hmm.
That's
easy, medium, or hard. The computer's letting you win.
Yeah.
And here's why it lets you win. Because when you perform a move, the computer is registering your inputs for the counter. It's not registering your avatar's on-screen attacks. Now, some of you who don't understand technical data don't understand why that's a big deal. If you respond to the character's on-screen's inputs, the character has frame lag. But the inputs you perform don't. So when you perform the inputs, the computer knows the input you're performing and will perform the counter to it instantly, if it chooses to. Difficulty only determined the percent of chance that the computer would counter your move. Easy, 40%. Medium, 60, 65%. Hard, 80 to 90%.
Easy, the computer forgets where the block button is.
The computer doesn't need a block button. That's the problem. You know? Yeah. And Mara Jade, in Mortal Kombat Ultimate, if the computer played her, MK3 Ultimate, you lost. If the computer, of course the computer always played Reptile in MK1, he had both Sub-Zero and Scorpion's moves, and he was projectile immune. So you had to beat him with no projectile. Yeah. And he was twice as fast as anyone.
Right.
So the computer, you had to roll consistently odds in your favor to win against him. Because if you didn't roll in your favor, the computer would counter your movements based on your inputs. Again, not based on your avatar's in-frame animations, based on your inputs. So if you were on hard mode, beating Reptile was nigh impossible. You had to be on easy to even beat him.
Yeah, it's like back in the day when you were playing, you know, Pac-Man and all of a sudden the ghosts started speeding up and speeding up and speeding up. I mean, the computer's definitely faster than you, so
yeah,
you know, the ghost chasing you down is not really
that's not the issue. The issue is when the AI changes. Because in Pac-Man, the AI ghosts have scatter AI, then they have pursuit AI, then they have fear AI when you eat a power pellet. The scatter AI doesn't last as long the further you are in the game. Now, people still beat Pac-Man. After level 255, the game does the whole thing, and then it spams out. People have beaten it, as in they've gotten as far as they can get and die. And they've gotten as maximum a score as you can get. So people have beaten Pac-Man in that sense. But if you're not one of those elite few who can do that, Pac-Man is a game that as you progress, after you progress to key level, pair to key, then it's all keys. If you guys know what I'm talking about. If you don't, yeah, play Pac-Man. Once you get all keys, the AI scatter mode lasts too short of a time and pursuit mode lasts too long. That if you don't know how the ghosts behave, you won't get far. You have to know exactly how they behave.
And even between individual ghosts, each ghost has a different version of the AI.
Yeah, but Pac-Man has been solved. You know, according to the gamers, they've solved it. They know how each ghost AI works, and people who play Pac-Man competitively know how the ghosts behave. And that's fine, because that's cool. Anyway, this is us reminiscing over old arcade games, because back in our day, the arcade, you guys don't understand, young generations have no idea how cool the arcade really was.
I remember the first time I played Super Mario 3 was in an arcade.
Play Choice 10 machine.
Yes, the Play Choice 10 machine.
That was the machine.
And it was, you could pick whatever game you wanted to play, and it used a timer. Mm-hmm. So you're paying per quarter. For time.
Yep. Doesn't matter how many lives you accrue, the quarters were for time.
Yeah. And at the end of your time, it would just reset the game on you, and it's like,
you didn't put enough money in. That's why people who could speedrun Mario 3 in 5 minutes, it's like, yeah, fuck you. 1 quarter, beat the game. You know? But yeah, Play Choice 10 was the big thing. Nintendo games got put on Play Choice 10. Neo Geo games got put on a Play Choice 10. If it was a Neo Geo machine, it was a Neo Geo machine. If it was a Nintendo machine, it was a Nintendo machine. But the arcade machine cabinets had advantages because they had more RAM chips, they had more processing power. They were a better experience. Every arcade machine in the 80s and 90s was just a way better experience than any console on the market at the time.
Remember the movie The Wizard where they introduced Super Mario Brothers 3?
Yes.
God.
That actually was fiction because those of us who played games and arcade games together, we knew that what they were doing wasn't really possible because some of those games never made it into the arcade.
No.
Ever. And they couldn't play perpetually. There was a time limit. But they played every game. Ninja Gaiden, Castlevania 2, like every game was like on
Rad
the arcade.
Racer.
Like these games, Rad Racer had an arcade version of it, but it wasn't the NES version of it, you know. And the Wizard was
the NES, but you remember, see, that was the thing. The character was Lucas, and the Lucas was playing, and he had the Power Glove.
It's so bad.
Yeah, it
is bad.
It was terrible. I had one, and it was absolutely horrid.
You know the funny thing about the Power Glove, though, is it came from a technology that cost $5,000 to $7,000, and that technology worked. They dumbed down the technology of the Power Glove so that they could market it for Nintendo.
Yeah.
The Power Glove itself, like you guys don't understand, the Power Glove itself was a microfiber optic technology that worked flawlessly when it was the way it was intended to be built.
And it used and for the actual like positioning so that it knew you were moving your hand in a certain manner. This was before they had, you know, like nowadays they've got the gyroscopic positioning chips in modern electronics.
Yeah, gyros, levels and things,
Yeah, gyros. So they didn't have a gyro. So the only thing that they could do to track it was it used ultrasonic little clicks. And you had a sensor bar that went around your TV.
For the Power Glove now for Nintendo, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay, we're talking about that one. Yeah. Not the original prototype concept, but the Power Glove for Nintendo.
No.
Yeah.
And you could, it had like this black thing sitting on like the top of your hand that had two ultrasonic emitters coming out the front.
Well, it's like an old-fashioned Star Trek tech.
Yeah, and you could put it up to your ear and hear it clicking.
Mm-hmm.
And that was part of the troubleshooting.
Yep.
My Power Glove isn't working.
You have to orientate it
and see if you can hear. Hold it to your ear and see if you can hear clicking. That was one of the things.
Does it work?
And I was like, that was a terrible, terrible accessory.
I just wish that the technology of that time, like today, the technology of the Power Glove that cost $5,000 back in 1985, could probably be built for under $500 today.
Well, I mean, look at the tech that's right here in a VR headset.
Right,
okay?
And that's not $500.
No, this is a. Hang on, it's being. There we go. This is an Oculus Quest 2.
Right,
and it's got these cameras on it, and so it uses optical recognition to determine. So, like the other ones, like the Index and the first generation Oculus Rift, they use positioning devices in the room.
Yep.
Whereas this one uses what they called inside-out tracking. So when it tracks where you are, it tracks the positioning by comparing everything to the world around you, and it's pretty reliable. Actually,
it's better than the old version that requires you to put up a cube of sensors around you and have a giant living room.
Yeah, and some people say it's not as accurate, but
you needed 4 cubic meters of space for the original, and now you don't.
Yeah, that also has a standalone mode, which is nice because you can turn on standalone mode and it just draws a circle around you where it's basically about 2 or 3 feet on either side.
Yeah, that's what I like about technology like that for gaming purposes. See, like virtual reality. If you're as old as we are, virtual reality in the late 80s and 90s was shit. I mean, really shit, and it faded into obscurity because it was crap.
Go back and watch Lawnmower Man.
Perfect example, right there.
Yeah, it was terrible.
The visual effects were horrible in that movie, even for the time. But for the time, they were cutting edge. And even cutting edge, you would watch the movie and be like, "That's actually interesting to see," but you absolutely know, like there's no suspension of disbelief. You're in a computer simulation. I mean, it's all polygons. It's all low res. And that movie isn't exaggerating. That's about as far as computers could really render at the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it was. But then you look at stuff like Tron.
Okay. But Tron was intentionally like that.
Well, okay, but
Tron, but it really was cutting edge. You're right. For the time, it was.
Tron looked.
See, for the time,
Go ahead.
Tron
looked realistically digital.
Correct.
So
explain what that means to you. Give me your version of what it means to be realistically, quote unquote, digital.
Right. They didn't make any attempt. I mean, obviously the suits. Okay.
Forget the suits the actors wore. We knew they wore those for technical reasons, so we can ignore that. But let's look at the backgrounds and stuff.
Right. But you look at the backgrounds, and what they did was they had, the people walking around in these environments, and the environments were computer rendered, but they were rendered very statically. So the art style was very clean, and it didn't look like they were attempting to like over render things. When you got in stuff like the recognizers and things like that, then they started looking a little cheesy. But the environments in Tron, the original Tron movie,
I know, I've seen it.
Were gorgeous. I loved it. It's still one of my favorite movies of like all times.
It was dark. I don't mean dark as in story wise. I mean like physically.
Mm-hmm.
The environments were dark when they needed to be dark, and they had brightness when they needed to be bright. That is a really good use of how that works. I'm not saying Tron is a good movie, script-wise or anything, because, oh my god, I could poke holes in the plot all day. What we're talking about is Tron from a technical... I'm laughing as fuck. Tron from a technical standpoint, from what computers could do at the time. And we're talking about that. And that really was as far... Disney, don't forget, funded that movie. And that was as far as you could afford computer technology at the time. The funny thing about it is, when Tron 2.0 came out as a video game, they kept all of those aesthetics intact because that's the universe of Tron. And it wouldn't make sense to change it because Tron established that there's a digital universe inside that looks like that. So when they had Tron... I played Tron 2.0 for the computer. I owned it. It was for the console, and I played it.
That was the first-person shooter one, right?
It was so stupid because fall damage was like, if you fell more than one block up, you died. I was like, oh my god, fucking great. I mean, I could talk all day about Tron the game, but anyway, we're not here to talk about that game specifically, but our conversation has gone into the technical aspects of computers at the time, and it does relate to video games on the whole. But Tron had that aesthetic, so when Tron 2.0, the movie came out, I'm not saying Tron 2, the movie, was good, but they kept the style of the original movie intact. And in doing that, they canonized how that worked. I'm not saying that from a technical standpoint they couldn't have done better. Yes, technology has improved and they instantly could have made a better virtual environment for you to go into, but they kept that staticness. Is that a word? Anyway, they kept that static appeal of the universe intact. So, you guys... Again, I'm speaking to the younger generation, don't really understand how, when we grew up with this evolution of computers, but then as an adult, as a mature brain, we can say, okay, 80s computer movies suck balls, but what they established as the lore and canon of that universe, can we keep that for a modern... And I think that's what Tron 2.0 nailed. Was keeping the canon of the original movie intact as far as world building. Don't talk about plot. characters, motivation, anything like that. Just world building.
And it disappointed me greatly because the original Tron movie spawned a couple of really good video games, including an excellent arcade game at the time. Look at it now; it's very boring.
The video game Tron is very boring now.
Yeah, but
I remember playing it in the roller skating rink.
Everything that came out of Tron Legacy was terrible. All the games were bad.
True. Well, I mean, it's subjective, but in our perspective, we consider it objective because we remember other things. And so Tron Legacy goes around and like, basically all Tron was, for those of you who've never played Tron the arcade machine, because most of you haven't, let's be realistic here, was a collection of 6 minigames. Wasn't it 6? I remember Light Cycle. I remember the clown dude shooting shit. I remember, oh fuck, only 2 now. I can't remember any other minigame for Tron. It was a collection of minigames. That's all Tron was.
You had the game where you were bouncing the ball off of the ceiling.
Yes, okay, that one. That's the 3rd game. See, it's so hard to remember all the minigames of Tron, but there weren't that many.
There were things throwing like a disc at each other.
That was the discus one. Yeah, that's what you're talking about. You just talked about that. Discus one, Light Cycle, and the shooty one, where you're at the bottom.
Well, no. There's a difference between the disc one. There's a difference between the disc one and the one that's like highlight. The one where you got the scoop on your hand.
The scoopa.
Well, in the movie, they've got the scoop, like it's the highlight scoop.
Okay, but let's go to the arcade cabinet now. There was one mini game where you were a dude at the bottom, and okay, that actually was the final scene in Tron, where he's trying to get his discus into the MPC. It was called MPC, right?
MCP.
He's trying to get his disc into the MCP, the master. Yeah, and he has that shield that goes around and blocks it. That was a mini game where you're at the bottom, throwing shit up, trying to get through it, and the shield's rotating around.
It was like a block breaker game.
Yeah, it was, but the block breaker kept getting closer and closer to you, and you had to get a hole in it before it killed you. That was a mini game. Light Cycle was a mini game. Discus was a mini game, and I don't remember any of the other mini games. That's the problem, because I don't think any other mini games made it into the movie. Just those 3 did.
Yeah,
but there was more. Tron, I believe, was a collection of 6 mini games. That's all it was. You play the quarter. I don't think you had a choice in which order the mini games played in. I think it was random. I don't ever remember choosing the mini game.
It was random except for the the MCP.
That one was last one.
I think it was random which one you got.
I do think so too.
And then if you beat that one, you were able to take a crack at the MCP.
And if you failed that one, you went back to another one. And you had a certain number of lives to continue to keep doing that for each quarter.
Yeah, something.
It's hard to remember now because don't forget, Tron the arcade game didn't last that long in arcades. They kept moving enough of things.
But it did have the best joystick in the arcade.
Because it was always so responsive.
Yeah. No, I just thought it looked the coolest with the glow because it used that clear. It used the
my
clear
God.
blue.
That's okay. That's only one specific arcade cabinet of Tron, though. Not all of them were built that way.
I never saw one that wasn't.
I think I did, but okay. I could be suffering, what's it called, the Mandela effect, where you remember something differently as a child?
Oh,
whatever it's called. I could be suffering that. I could. You might remember it better than me. So, yeah. But anyway, that was Tron. And that's where my love / disdain for the movie comes from, because we played the game. Actually, I played the game before I saw the movie. So, you know.
Yeah, it was such a waste of time. It was like, it was definitely a money grab.
Tron, the arcade game, was designed to make you fail. I don't know of anyone who beat it, because you had to be a god at that game to beat it.
Yeah, it was tough.
The AI, although simple at the time, 80s, was programmed to be a little bitch to you. It wasn't programmed to be fair to you. It was programmed specifically.
Especially the light cycles.
Oh, Jesus Christ, the light cycle. I only beat the light cycle once. And I remember playing
things...
Tron not thousands, dozens of times. And I only beat light cycle once.
There have been so many times when there's been such a small gap, and somehow the computer managed to get through it.
Because the computer has frame-perfect inputs, and you don't.
Yeah.
That's why. He can go one frame up, one frame over, and get that gap, and your little ass can't. The computer wasn't programmed with human in mind. So it's going to try to program the most optimal route. And you can't. I mean, you can, but you can't perform it. It's like
and then they came out with games like Killer Instinct, where they come out with these massive combos that the computer just can instantly execute on you, just to smear your face in the whopping pile of dog crap.
And if you haven't mastered Combo Break, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Combo Break, generally speaking, was hold back for 2 seconds forward medium punch. For a lot of characters, that was Combo Break. And it was like universal.
And then when they did the what was it, the brutality or whatever at the end, when they...
In Killer Instinct, you had ultimates, you had ultimates, you had ultras, and you had... That's it, right? Ultimates and ultras? Ultimate was the secret.
Yeah, I was going to say, the ultimate was like the finishing move, right?
It was, but you had to do it specifically at a special time during your combo when their energy was already dead. I did it twice to you with Raptor, and I still don't know how I did it. I did it twice in a row to him. Twice in a row. First time was a fluke, and he goes, "How'd you do that? Raptor ate me, and he has a big-ass belly, and it says ultimate." And I go, "I fucking don't know!" So we played a rematch, and I did it again! I am not making this shit up. I did it again the second time in a row, and I still don't know fucking how I did it. And he goes, Woodchuck over there says, "Bullshit, you know how to do it." And I said, "I don't fucking know how to do this." Go ahead, sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was just like, "Oh, you're such a lying piece of crap."
He did. He accused me of lying, and he still did. Like, years went by, high school. He's like, "Still you're lying." Like, "I'm not." And I still don't know how I fucking did it. I don't know how I did the ultimate and ate him twice in a row. Like, when I did the first time, my brain remembered where my thumbs were. So my brain tried to recreate that the second time. And by some miracle, it did it. But the third time didn't work. Short of looking up the move of how I did it, which I haven't done yet.
That's another thing modern kids will never understand, is printing out or writing down a move list.
I had written down move list up the ass for fighting games.
Oh, God. Remember we just had sheets and sheets of paper that we were sitting on the bus with.
He's right.
Just sharing them back and forth. It was just like, oh my God.
Here's like all three of Sub-Zero's fatalities, you know, here they go. Or whatever.
Yeah. And now kids, you know, they put the move lists right in the games.
No, they do. You go to training mode, you hit start. Actually, the first game that I remember did that with us was Soul Edge. Because
I think you're right.
It was Soul Edge for the PlayStation. It was Soul Blade
Calibur
for the arcade, but Soul Edge for the home version. The first one only. Not Soul Calibur, not Soul Calibur 2 or 3. Soul Blade / Soul Edge, same game. For PlayStation, if you go to training mode, you hit start to pause. It literally showed you the move list.
Speaking of interesting arcade games, do you remember the 3D one at the movie theater? The 3D fighting game?
You're not talking about Virtual Fighter 2, are you?
No. It was the one that you had to stand right in front of it. It had a curved screen underneath a glass plate.
You look down to play.
Yes.
Did it have a fake holographic projection of the
Yes.
screen up? Oh, God.
Yeah.
What was that called?
It was... I don't remember.
That was expensive, too. It cost $1 to play, or 4 tokens.
Yeah. It was 4 quarters to play. Because it was in the movie theater, so everything in the movie theater took actual quarters.
Yeah, they didn't have
because it
tokens.
wasn't an arcade.
Yeah. I remember the mechanics of that machine. I don't remember the title of that machine. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. It was something like it was like Coliseum or
it had.
I want to say
this one weird arcade machine. If anyone watches this later, it's true. It's like you look down to play, and it had this projection upward. It used technology of parabolic projection, where you had an image and it had a parabolic lens so that it would project sort of like a hologram. That's old technology, by the way. And it was like the only arcade machine I'd ever seen like that. Ever in my existence. So, and I only saw it once and never again.
Yeah, I never saw it anywhere except.
And people think I'm making it up now because I seriously, this is like a rare machine. It had to have been because I never saw it except that one place. A lot of arcade machines were like that, by the way, guys. In the 80s and then going into the 90s, you got these prototype arcade machines that had limited distribution. And if you were lucky enough to live in the city that they distributed it to, you played it, you thought it was cool, and then you might have forgotten the name of it, and then everyone else thinks you're inventing this machine because they only maybe made 500 of them, right? Or less. And distributing them was like worldwide, or at least Europe and the United States. So 500 went to both continents, and 100 of them went to the United States, and it's like you were lucky to ever see any of these unique machines. The one unique machine
actually,
that I saw...
I found... Hang on a second. I found the machine, but the problem is that like the most popular game on it was not the one we got.
Well, don't forget, this might have been like the machine's technology could have probably been used for more than one game, right?
Right. There were a bunch of different games. So the it was pioneered by Sega.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. Sega did a lot of arcade cabinets.
It was called the Coliseum.
Coliseum.
Yeah.
If any of you guys ever watch this later and look up Coliseum arcade cabinet, dude, maybe one of us is in the market to buy it for nostalgia. Shit.
Yeah, apparently, you can find them.
I mean, I'm not saying they're impossible to find. Like, you can always usually find most arcade cabinets, but I wish I had the money. I used to talk with Woodchuck over there about we were middle school, high school, and I said, when we went down a specific road to go to a junction of a highway, not a highway, but an avenue, and there was a plot of land for sale next to a gas station. And I said, that would be the perfect place for an arcade. I'd buy that land and make an arcade machine. Right? And like, I was saying, you know what? If I bought this and made an arcade there, I have that like fantasy for 3 or 5 years, like somewhere between 3 and 5 years, between middle school and high school, like to spanned it. And I love that plot of land. And someone bought it, dried it out, and I think they built a daycare there. But it was a really good place of like, I'm like, it's right off the main area, but it's not too far away, and it's like right next to a bunch of houses. You could literally ride your bike there or walk there if you were willing to walk 1.5 miles. It was a really good land, right around a bunch of housing developments, like subdivisions. So like it would have a really good base for customers, you know. Don't forget the arcade died in the late 90s. But we didn't know it was going to die. You know, we're middle school, high school, and we're talking like, you know, late 80s to early 90s to maybe mid-90s. Arcades went strong until the late 90s. Arcades didn't even die until the PS2 era came around. Because even the PlayStation 1 and N64 still couldn't really compete with arcades. But the arcade was fading out because people were getting better game experiences at home, to the point where they didn't see a need to spend 20 to 40 bucks to go to the arcade, when they could spend 40 bucks and buy a game, and it was a decent arcade experience. That's what killed the arcade.
Yeah, remember the probably the last arcade that
Starbucks. Not to be confused with Starbucks coffee. Starbucks arcade.
No, I was going to say the last arcade that I really remember was the one that was on the corner in the Albertsons Plaza.
That wasn't an arcade. That was Video Fever. That was a rental place that had 3 machines.
No. No, it's a sports bar now.
Oh, Video Game Masters. You had one. You had a membership card that was in the single digits because you went and got one of the first memberships there. Video Game Masters.
Okay, but that was right next to the movie theater. Yep. I'm talking about down at the end of that row.
Right. Okay. End of that row.
Okay.
That was Hollywood Video for a while.
Right. And eventually it got bought out.
Sports bar. Whale Sports Bar is what it was after that.
Thirsty Whale.
Thirsty Whale. But before that,
it was an arcade.
Really?
And they had,
wow.
And they had Mortal Kombat in there and Virtua Fighter and
didn't know that.
Was it Street Fighter 3? I think they had
3 came out at that time. Street Fighter 3 didn't come out until like minimum 2000, right?
No. It was Super Street Fighter. That was it.
Super Street Fighter 2. Yeah, that came out. Wait, that came out in the 90s. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because I remember that was the one where
that was the new Warriors. That was when they introduced DJ, Cammy, and the other 2. I can't remember the 4 Fire Rangers. It was DJ, Cammy, and who was
T-Hawk.
T-Hawk, and who was the 4th one?
Fei Long.
Perfect. Those are the 4 new characters. Yeah.
There it goes. Finally focused.
Yeah, that was really good times. I really wish you guys modern really knew how enjoyable the arcade really was. Friday after school, ride your bike to the arcade. You know?
Sit down and get like a Coke and a pizza and $20.
And $20. You had to have at least 20 to enjoy the arcade. Now $20 back in 1990 was kind of a lot of money.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know this, but minimum wage in 1990 was still $5.25 an hour. So $20 was not quite, but 4 hours of work. So half a workday at minimum wage was $20.
Yeah.
Just under. So it's really hard for you guys to wrap your head around that nowadays, but $20, like, you could work your ass off and get $50 a day. So $20 was just under half of your paycheck for the day. So are you willing to spend half a day's paycheck on the arcade? Kids would, because they wouldn't work, but parents who were going to give their kids $20, you know, they were like, I don't know. That's a lot of money to give you, you know.
Yeah. And that's why we usually ended up going to the movie theater, because seeing a movie was like $5.
Back in the day, he's not wrong. This is off the topic of games, but go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm just saying, because that's where we spent a lot of our time.
You're right.
Was
movie theater
playing
was big.
Games in the movie theater while waiting for the $5 afternoon matinee movie.
Mm-hmm. Actually, the matinee was cheaper, but I'll get into that in a second.
Yeah, but so we would sit there and you know, it was like $8.50 at night.
Oh yeah,
but it was $5 for like a it was like any showing before 5 o'clock.
I'll tell you the exact pricing because I had it down to a science. I remember General Cinema Theaters, and I remember its pricing scheme like that.
Yeah.
From noon to 4, it was $5. From 4 to 6, the matinee. Now they changed their pricing over time, $3.50 or $3.75. Let's just assume $3.75. You paid $3.75 if the movie started from 4 to 6. After 6, $7.
And remember using a collect call to call your parents, and that was the joke that they do. Yeah, you do the collect call and you like it records your name, and you
Mhm.
go,
Do you accept the charges? Yeah, and you could just say
do
no.
you accept the charges? No.
That was just
It
a
was
calling card to say I'm at the theater.
yeah.
Yeah, that was back when payphones were a thing. Send a collect call to your friend, but you have the system set up in advance. And then when you got the collect call from your friend, of course you didn't say yes. Your parents would beat the fuck out of you if you said yes, because collect calls were 10 cents a minute. So no, you didn't accept, but you knew when your
And it was
friend
like
called you.
It was $5 for the first minute, and then like
No, it wasn't
25
$5 for
cents each.
$5
Well,
was way too. Yeah,
there was a connection fee.
yeah. The connection fee versus the minutes, the per minute. The
Yeah.
connection fee, depending on the service of the phone booth. Now, most phone booths were AT&T, but some phone booths were Sprint.
Well, at the time, it was Bell South.
And Bell South. But Bell South got bought
Yeah.
out by AT&T, so they became AT&T.
Yeah.
So they were three competing companies until that happened, right? And then Sprint, of course, more. But we're not here to talk about that. But we're here to talk about. We're on a tangent topic, but still, it's fun. So I just want to entertain it for a minute. It's true. Like it was either $1, but up to $2.75 connection fee.
But going back to it though, the reason we were having to make the collect call is because you spent all your damn quarters on the video game.
Yeah. Duh.
There weren't any extra quarters to make the phone call.
That was just a signal. We're here at the movie theater, you know. But you see, we had our bikes. We weren't stranded. We rode our bikes everywhere.
And yes, the other thing where you'd make the call, hang up.
Of course.
Get your quarterback.
Perfect.
Make the call again, hang up.
So they would hear the ring, one ring, and then it would stop. If you did it twice, the system in place was they weren't paying for the call at that point, because if it didn't connect, you got your quarterback. Yeah,
right.
True.
But that was the thing was do that, come get me.
Yep, that was come here, come hither. Yeah. So that was a thing, but again, the phone booth era is long gone. But that's because you spent all your money on games, and the games at the movie theater would constantly cycle, but sometimes they kept the same game around because it was the most profitable. Street Fighter 2 was a big one. Mortal Kombat was a big one. The movie theater also sometimes kept a pinball machine, but not always. But at the bowling alley, there was a pinball machine that I used to love to play all the time. Woodchuck and I, we did movies for $3.75 at the matinee. Like, school would get out. Middle school, though, got out at $4.10. You might think that's too late, but it didn't start until 9:30. And the reason they did that is because high school, elementary school, and middle school shared the same buses. So they staggered the start times to share the same buses, so that the city wouldn't have to pay twice or triple the bus fee. So high school started first at 7, elementary started next at 8, and middle school started next at 9. It allowed the bus loop to happen every hour. And the bus drivers could actually work for 4 or 5 hours. So it helped them. And then in the afternoon, they got 4 or 5 more hours too. So this system, while it seems bizarre on the surface, how middle school started the latest at 9, and then 6 hours later, well, it was actually 7 hours because you had to do lunch and the transition time. So middle school ended at 4. But once middle school ended, you could ride your happy ass up to the theater, because our actual middle school was pretty fucking close to the movie theater. Like, all things considered. Well, that middle school was actually close to Starbuck Arcade. We could ride our bike to Starbuck Arcade very quickly. Movie theater was the opposite direction.
Which one was Starbuck Arcade?
If you went down, I'm not going to do road names in case anyone can identify us, but if we went down that one road that connected to the road where the Blockbuster was on, the big road, where the Blockbuster and the Taco Bell and the, that road, right? We went to that one Blockbuster on that one big road.
Boulevard, yeah.
The Boulevard. When we were on the Boulevard, the Blockbuster was there, right? That road on the other side was where Starbuck Arcade was. if you went down the road that we usually rode our bikes down, we had to turn right to go to the Blockbuster, but we had to turn left to go to the bowling alley, right? Riding our bikes, go down. It sounded like Orange, but it's not Orange Drive, but it sounded like Orange. You go down, well, I'll just call it Orange Drive. You go down Orange Drive and go to the boulevard. If you turn left, we hit the bowling alley. If you turn right, we hit the Blockbuster. That boulevard, if we turn right to go to the Blockbuster was on our left. The Starbucks Arcade was on our right. And just beyond the Starbucks Arcade was the front entrance to the middle school that we never went to because the back entrance is where the buses were.
Right. Okay. I know where you're talking about.
But if you left the middle school by the front entrance, you were really close to the Starbucks Arcade.
You remember at the mall they had Aladdin's Castle?
Yes.
That was a great arcade.
That was great, but they changed their pricing scheme so much it became stupid. Okay, Aladdin's Arcade was... Here's how it changed, guys. You put $1 in. They used to give you 5 tokens per dollar. That actually was an amazing deal. Then they went to 4 tokens a dollar, which you expected.
But
then they went to 3 tokens per dollar, with the chance to get a red token that you could redeem at the counter for 5 tokens. And no motherfucker ever got a red token.
I never saw one.
I never saw one. It was bullshit. They said there were red tokens in there. That if you found one, you would go to the counter and redeem it for 5. It was basically old version's loot box. Where you were trying to buy some shit. And that was loot boxes before loot boxes had a name. Put $1 in, hopefully you get a red one. I never saw a red one. I sat there and camped, not playing arcade games, but watching the machine for 2 hours. People putting dollars in. Never fucking saw a red token. I think they were lying their asses off. Which is what they do anyway these days. You're never going to get that skin, by the way. They say it's in there, but it ain't. But they say it's in there. So, that was the version of loot boxes that we had to deal with. But that was when they got greedy. And actually, it caused them to shut down because people stopped going there. I remember the volume of customers kept dwindling because of that. Yeah. The last time I went there was like when I was 17. We went to the mall just before graduation. You were already graduated, but you came back when I was about to graduate. We went there. It was almost dead. There was like 7 people there. And we didn't even play any games. We just walked by it.
And that's just another thing. And it's not just arcades, but malls are dead too.
Yeah.
I mean,
even without COVID, malls are dead.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And so you can't operate an arcade.
Arcades require a high customer base.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they can't make a profit. I think it was you had to put a quarter into a machine like every 6 minutes for it to be profitable. Something like that. For some of the machines.
I don't know the numbers.
There was a science down to how often people had to put quarters in for a machine to be viable.
Yeah.
The other way arcades were viable were in the tickets. We're reminiscing about old games. The ticket machines. Games. The ski shoot. The rigged circle that you could never get the dot on because they've proven later that actually was rigged. The machine.
Yeah, Mark Rober did a whole thing. He built a robot to push the button
exactly when you were supposed to, and it still failed because the machine is programmed. If it happens on the light it's supposed to, it says, "Wait a minute, my RNG says it's not time yet." Boop. So it doesn't matter if you hit it on the frame or not.
Or Stacker or the key game.
Anything that revolved around tickets, if it wasn't ski shoot, it was rigged.
Yeah. And even claw machines. Claw machines will the whole
this right here,
the whole thing, that grabbing action is electromagnetic.
It's actually they tweak the power of it to be very weak.
Yeah, they reduce the power by like 20 or 30% until a certain amount of money has been collected.
Then it goes up higher and you pick one. Yeah.
Right.
And that you guys don't know. I used to like think I could get a stuffed animal, a little plushie out of it. I won a few plushies out of those machines, but it's random, and you don't have any idea when you're gonna get it. And not only is it random when the claw is tighter or looser, they pack the fuckers in so tight that even when it's at the randomness of being a tighter claw, it just might not grip it hard enough because they put those little bitches in so goddamn tight. You won't win a plushie.
No.
It's like, yeah, it could be the most desirable plushie you see. For the sake of argument, let's pretend you're into SpongeBob and the newest SpongeBob plushie happens to be in the claw machine. And you're like, holy fuck, I want that. It's only a quarter to try. That plushie in the store was $6. I'm going to try for a quarter. You're going to spend $19 getting that motherfucker. Okay? If you get it at all.
I remember that there was a bowling alley that my family used to go to for league bowling.
Okay.
And they had an arcade. And so, of course, there was a claw machine in the arcade. And I don't think that the claw machine proprietor ever set a limit on the claw thing. Because I believe it was set to 100% every time.
You mean 100% tightness? Like it
like
would actually
100% grab strength.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you could get every time get a
that would be the dream claw machine, the one you want to do.
And between my brother, my sister, me, a couple of the other kids that were part of the other families that were in the bowling league, it got to the point where kids that were not good at the claw machine would come and bring us quarters to play and get them things.
If you were good at it and could line it up right, yeah, they would pay the token and you would do it. Yeah, perfectly legit. That's claw machines done right. At least for our perspective.
I don't even want to know how much that guy...
He lost. Yeah, he would have lost a lot of money because he would have had to have bought the plushies for the sake of argument, let's say $2 a piece.
Yeah.
And if it's only costing you 1 or 2 or at most 3 tokens to get, then he is losing money. Absolutely. Yeah. So we go back. So now we're going back in the time machine. What was your first console that you got as a gift to you by your parents? Because we know as a kid you don't buy your own consoles, right? So what was the first one you got?
The first one I ever received that was mine and mine alone was an Atari 2600.
Me too.
Yeah. So...
What year was it? I can almost pinpoint my year. Somewhere between 1 year and 2 year I can pinpoint. It was 1985, I believe, when I got mine.
I was in...
4 or 5. One of those 2 years.
Let's see. I was in...
Obviously, elementary school.
Yeah, I was in 3rd grade.
Who'd you get it from? Was it just bought for you?
My mother.
Okay, it wasn't a hand-me-down from someone else. Okay.
No.
Gotcha.
No, my mother worked her butt off. Single mom at the time.
Before she... Okay. Yeah.
Worked her butt off.
Got you an Atari.
To get me an Atari. And, oh my God, I played the snot out of that thing.
How many games did you accrue? I know it's hard to know nowadays because your brain might not remember, but on average...
I only had about 6.
Okay.
So,
I had about 30.
Yeah, and there was another kid in my neighborhood.
But I wasn't rich.
Kind of...
Okay.
No. Oh, I remember your shenanigans on how you would get video games. You're saving your lunch money.
I wasn't a rich kid. In fact, I never got an allowance. Woodchuck did. I never got one. Off and on, you got one. Maybe you didn't get one every time, but you got a little bit of allowance here and there. I don't want to get into nuances of your family.
My allowance was usually ruined by the fact that I was a little shit, and I would get grounded all the time.
And when you got grounded, your allowance was suspended.
I never got my allowance.
If you were grounded, you didn't get your allowance. Yeah, okay. I didn't get an allowance, but I got lunch money. Do the math. I starved. Okay, I saved that motherfucking lunch money, and when I saved $80, I had to save my lunch money for around 35 to 45 days, and I had enough money. Mortal Kombat 2 at the time was $79.99 in the store.
Oh God.
I saved that much. Oh, plus tax. I knew it was plus tax, so I had to have the tax. So I wasn't dumb. My parents taught me the value of a dollar by not giving me dollars. So I knew how valuable a dollar was. So I could calculate it myself in my head. This is probably why I'm so good at math these days. Because my parents never gave me money that I could spend. So I had to structurally, creatively spend my money. And so, in this case, lunch money...
You learned to budget.
I learned how to budget. As a kid, as a middle school kid, and as a high school kid, I learned how to budget. What was your salary? My lunch money. Didn't you lose weight? No, I ate a bunch of dinner. But yeah, my mother always wondered why I wanted seconds and thirds of dinner. I wonder why. Haven't eaten all day. But I digress. I had this lunch money set up. $80 plus 7% sales tax. Now, that's 7 times 8 is, that's about $5.60 extra in tax. So I had to have about $86 to buy this thing, and I did. So about 45 days, I saved my lunch money. And I at the time, Ian doesn't. The day, I can't remember the date. I think it was like, anyway, I was about to say the date, but I just died. Yeah, my brain just shut the fuck off. Anyway, okay, back on track. Mortal Kombat, save $86. My bike at the time needed a new inner tube, so I couldn't ride it. So I walked my happy ass 2 miles to the store. Walked.
Yep.
And there was no sidewalks on our road. Not my road.
Nope.
Not my road. Woodchuck's road, there was some sidewalks. He actually was closer.
The sidewalks on your road didn't start up
until
you were about halfway to the shopping plaza.
Right. After the apartments.
Right.
They weren't called Sun Apartments, but we'll call them Sun Apartments. After Sun Apartments, they started, or right around Sun Apartments.
I lived in those apartments for a little while.
Well, you were at the other one. You were at the one where the horseshoe road went to the main boulevard to the road I lived on. You were there. That's where you lived.
Before I moved to over by the mall, we had to sell our house. And
I don't know that move because I met you after that move.
Huh?
I met you after that move because when I met you, you were living in the road that was further north, closer to the movie theater and the boulevard.
I didn't move until like high school, dude.
I never visited you in middle school then, did I? Like your house.
Yeah, you came over and spent the night a few times.
I don't remember the first house then. I only remember the second house in high school. That's weird. You said you moved after I knew you one time.
The two-story or the one-story?
Never saw the two-story inside. I saw the one-story.
I was going to say, that was the first house.
Was it? Then I never saw the second-story one because...
So you never saw this. You never saw our second house.
Correct.
Well...
Correct.
When we sold the one-story house,
learned something new.
Moved to those apartments for a little while.
The Sun Apartments? So, okay, great. Anyway, that's where the sidewalk started. So I was walking before that. $86 in my pocket. Walking up 2 miles. Go to the Kmart. Kmart existed at the time. Walked straight to the electronics section. Tapped on the glass and said, I want MK2. Didn't even hesitate.
Back then, there was no mature rating.
Nope. The MSRP didn't exist yet.
No.
Not yet. Not yet, anyway. It was close.
No.
MK2 actually pioneered it. MK and MK2 really did, but there were some publications of the box that didn't have any MSRP ratings on them, and yes, anyone could buy it. And here I am, a little shit, walking in, buying it, and there was no rating on it, so of course I could buy it. And I did. Paid the money, walked out, walked home. The entire trip home, I've got my shirt tucked into my pants, and the game is inside my shirt, so I didn't have to hold it. So it's there, right? It's in cellophane shrink wrap. It's not going to get sweaty. And I'm reciting Shao Kahn's lines that he's going to say to me while he kicks my ass. I'm like, you will die. Like, the entire trip home. Yeah, I'm just quoting all of the MK lines. So hyped.
You will. I love when he'd say it, and you'd like kick him in the face, and it'd reset him.
That was fucking gold.
You. Damn it! Stop that.
If you got him in a loop, it was rare. But if you got him in a loop of his gloating, he would gloat, and if you kicked him, if the AI triggered it again, he would quote it again, and you could hit him perpetually, not perpetually, but at least 2 or 3 times in a row while he's trying to gloat at you. You will die.
Stop it. I'm trying to say something.
Yes. Well, he never said that, but we thought it in our heads. MK2 was buggy as fuck, but it wasn't as buggy as Ultimate MK3 for Super Nintendo.
Oh, God.
When you and I played that game, there were so many bugs in that game.
Train wreck.
Train wreck of bugs. If any of you don't know, MK3 Ultimate was an arcade cabinet, got ported to SNES late in its life. The N64 had already been released at the time, or it was close to being released. The PlayStation had already come out. MK3 Ultimate had come out for SNES. I owned it or rented it or something. And Woodchuck is at my house, and we're playing it, and we're just... Okay, there was only 2 natural stages. There wasn't enough memory in the game to auto-cycle stages. They put the stages in the game, but there wasn't enough memory to auto-cycle them. So you had to put codes in just to select the stage you wanted. That's 1 strike against it. 2 strikes against it was the fact that even you choose the stage, there were so many bugs in the stages because a lot of stages had stage fatalities, but they had stage effects like you uppercut them and go through the floor or through the ceiling. These transitions were buggy. A lot of characters in Ultimate MK3 were buggy. Like, you could perpetually spam things. Rain was buggy for a while. You could roundhouse kick 4 different times before it would break. He could do the round-the-world roundhouse kick.
Yeah.
He would roundhouse kick. God. Now, in the arcade, it was frame lock that you could only do it once. But in the home version, again, memory is tight on the SNES compared to the arcade cabinet. So they had to make cuts, and a lot of the cuts were really in frame rates. So
I thought I remember you could
do it 4
get
times.
them to go. No. On the arcade machine, you could kick them off the one side. They'd come around the world and back. And if you did it right, you could send them back the other way. But you could only do that once.
Yes, and that was programmed hard into the code for frame rates. Because the second uppercut, the second roundhouse kick you did added like 2 frames to the animation that you couldn't do it a 3rd time. But again, the SNES memory was so limited, they couldn't add those extra frames of animation in to the point where they just cut them out. You could do it 4 times. 4 times. On the 4th time, what the game did instead was push you back like 5 or 6 pixels. So your roundhouse kick would miss.
Yeah.
It wasn't adding the frames of animation in, but it pushed you. When you did the roundhouse kick 4 times, your offset was too much to do it a 5th time. That's how.
Hey, dude, I gotta wrap it up.
Oh man, we didn't even get into. Well, anyway, we had great.
We need to do this again
because we didn't even talk about I talked about your first console. We gotta talk about your first game experiences and things. We just reminisced about arcades. Okay, we were arcades now. Next time. We really got to focus on our console experiences.
Yep.
So...
Okay, man.
Thanks for... This was great, and I really hope we can do this again soon.
Absolutely.
Anyway, that's Woodchuck. I'm Zen. This has been our Game-Stalgia podcast for how we experienced games growing up. Hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully, I'll see you again for another one. Later.